nearly halfway.
Good morning. I'm Terry Topcat for Terry Topcat Presents. I'm with the wonderful Chris Duffy. It's Tuesday, the 16th of May, and this is Chris Duffy from the Duffy Archives. Good morning, Chris. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. I mean, survived the lockdown. I'm sure it's difficult for you guys too.
Yes, it's had a massive impact on everything, every industry, and particularly, well, not particularly. I mean, for us, obviously, the gallery and museum sector has been badly impacted. So I think it's slowly getting back on its feet, which is positive. And so yeah, upwards and onwards.
So first of all, I want to thank you and also the wonderful Sandy Goodman from Duffy Archives for arranging this. I really appreciate it. So we met I think it was sometime in 2018. There was an exhibition at the V&A, and I met you and Sandy there. And I think there's Steve Strange was probably exhibited there. And then we started chatting, and you told me about your wonderful father and his work. And then we had an interview on Facebook for about an hour. So today
Yeah.
we're about 20 minutes or half an hour or whatever is good for you. So first of all, I want to mention that the Aladdin Sane 50 Years exhibition is at the South Bank currently on now to the 28th of May. Uh,
Yeah.
and I went and it was fantastic. And I've been telling all my
Right.
friends to go. And so we can briefly start talking about you and then about your wonderful father, Brian Duffy. Where would you like to start? Because you started the Duffy Archives in, was it 2009?
Yes, I started a little earlier than that. I'd always tried to push Duffy to do something with his archive. He was never really interested in that, and his view was always, he said, "When I fall off the perch, it's all yours." And I said, "Well, that's all very well, but there's kind of a lot of information, background stuff I need you to work with me on." Although I had worked for Duffy for about half his career as his assistant, so the 70s period I was pretty conversant with. And after Duffy gave up photography, he went into film directing, commercials, and documentaries, and then after that, he moved tangentially into furniture restoration because he'd always had a massive passion for woodworking and furniture, and he became a member of quite an elite group of restorers called BAFRA. I think at the time there was only about 90 in the country, and he had to go back and get qualifications to join. And he ended up actually lecturing to professors, which was on furniture, which was pretty impressive. But that's the way he was. He had a very eclectic mind. He was very well read, and which is, jumping forward a bit, which is why I think he worked so well with David Bowie. They were very similar intellects and very like-minded. But so he went into furniture restoration and sadly contracted a degenerative lung condition called pulmonary fibrosis, which at best the prognosis is 5 years. And at that point, he decided that we would do something with the archive. So we started drilling down into all the negs and prints that he had. And it's been an incredible journey, which is now 13 years. I don't know where that's all gone, but and it just keeps moving forward. Of course, the major kind of injection that we had in terms of Duffy's profile, as you say, when we talked, was through the David Bowie is exhibition at the V&A, where the curators Jeff Marsh and Vicky Brokes wanted to use the, I say, recently released Eyes Open image. I'd given that to Kevin Can for his book Any Day Now, and the V&A picked up on that, and of course the original image, the classic image on the album cover, had been around for 43 years and no one had ever seen any other variations of it. So that was quite explosive. And of course, that was the key poster for David Bowie Is, which went around the world to 11 countries, over 2.5 million visitors. And part of our deal, obviously, we got a copyright credit on the poster. So I think that really gave Duffy such a broader footing, because I know from our web stats, every time it went to a new territory, we got a massive kind of hit. I guess, I mean, most people know David Bowie, but they wouldn't know Brian Duffy. So when they saw the picture and the credit, a lot of people investigated that, and and it's moved on from there. This year, of course, is the 50th anniversary of Aladdin Sane, and I had always suggested that it would be the image that would be David's legacy, and I think it's probably the most identifiable image that most people would know. I'm always astounded. I mean, when I look at Instagram and look at the pure volume of images of David, is quite extraordinary. He must have had like pictures taken every day. And we still see pictures we'd never seen.
True.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And so we're very privileged to have that image in the archive. It's what I will call the jewel in the crown of any photographer's portfolio. You know, I mean, you couldn't want for anything better. It is, or has become, a cultural icon. I nicknamed it the Mona Lisa of pop quite a few years ago, and
that's brilliant. Yeah,
and it's funny because if you Google that, it comes up in so many places. It's the power of the internet, but I think it is.
Have you?
Yeah,
the Mona
it's such an. Sorry.
Do you copyright that, Mona Lisa?
Well, oh yeah, should do. But it is such an extraordinary image, and I think that having the exhibition at the South Bank has, and of course, you know, that was a brilliant vehicle to promote the Aladdin Sane 50th anniversary book, where I released, and I guess I figured it was, you know, 50 years, when else are you going to do it? I released all the outtakes, which again, no one's ever seen.
Amazing.
So although they're much of a muchness on a theme, they're still very interesting in terms of just, I suppose, exposing the way that a photo session goes, and how in the end you pick one picture out of all of those, and the mystery that the original image had, because it was the only image. I suppose you could argue in some respects that it doesn't denude that image of still being a classic image, even though you see all the other variants. If you'd seen all the other variants, you know, much earlier on, I think it probably would have denuded the original picture. It would have diluted it. But I think now, in retrospect, it becomes a fascinating document. But of course, the South Bank exhibition, which I co-curated with Jeff Marsh from the V&A, who is an amazing social historian, has contextualized really the period, because of course 73 was a major change. We'd come out of the 60s and the whole swinging 60s in London phenomenon, and there was a new generation. Music had very much, I suppose, moved into what I call smoke and mirrors. I mean, you'd got it moved from the Beatles and the Stones and Hendrix into Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and Bowie coming along at that point with this image was a complete, as it is in the Flash, an explosion and a change, and it affected such a huge amount of people, and I suppose was David's launchpad, really. It was Tony DeFries's plan to make him a mega star, superstar, and the image propelled him. Of course, the album was brilliant, but I think imagery at that point was so important, because we only really got all our music news through Sounds, New Musical Express, Melody Maker. And of course, an album cover was very much an advertising placard. I remember going around to friends' houses, carrying my stack of records, you know, and there was a relationship with putting vinyl on a record player and looking and reading the lyrics from it, which you don't get now. I mean, with Spotify and download, you get the music, but you miss the other half of that tactile thing of vinyl and the record cover. So, but the exhibition explores the whole story of how the imagery came around, which I think is probably unique. I mean, I guess there's other album covers that have a deep, rich history to it, but because that is such a significant album, the history becomes more interesting as well, you know. And so the exhibition explores all the other areas, the people who were involved, the contributors from Ken Scott, Tony DeFries. There's video clippings there with interviews with Woody Woodmansey, Mike Garson. There's also, I put in there the original camera, which you probably saw, which is on a wooden plinth, yes, facing a 40 by 40 inch print of the classic Aladdin Sane. So when you look into it, you would see what Duffy saw on that day. So there's a lot going on there. There's also the memorabilia that surrounds the album. There's tear sheets from the New Musical Express, you know, showing it at #1 in the charts. And then towards the end of the exhibition, we have a record player with the album on a loop, and there's bean bags where you can chill and just hang out as long as you like. So it's a fully encompassed experience, I would suggest.
Before I talk more about your wonderful father, Duffy, I just want to say also, if people don't know, that there's an app of Bowie Years, which you can buy, which, you know, I went twice. I went once into London and I went to the New York one, which wasn't as extensive. It was still great. I think there was more stuff in the London exhibition in the V&A, but you can get the app. I think you just look on App Store on Bowie Years. And if you miss that experience, I highly recommend it. So your dad was started 1955, wasn't it, with Harper's Bazaar, when he started with the fashion and portrait photography?
No, it was later than that. He got a contract with Vogue in late '58.
Okay.
So '59 was when he started really taking pictures for Vogue, up until '63, when he'd also sort of branched out into doing advertising photography. And he was bringing work back to Vogue because he didn't have a studio. And Vogue were taking a big chunk of the money out of that. And it was at that point he decided he would start his own studio. So he took an amazing printer called Norman Brand from Vogue and set up his own studio in North London. And I guess life is always about timing. He was in the right place at the right time. We come out of that depressive, negative, post-war, late 50s atmosphere. And one of the things that also happened at the same time was technology, as it always does affect everything, with 35mm cameras and motor drives. And so his photography, particularly in the fashion area, made the girls come alive rather than those very Cecil Beaton, John French style pictures, which were with plate cameras and models were posed. Duffy, Bailey and Terry Donovan injected an essence of vibrancy and life into those pictures. And of course, swinging 60s started to take off. I mean, Duffy always said to me he could count the movers and shakers on two hands, your Vidal Sassoon or Mary Quant, Michael Caine, the Beatles, whereas today we have a myriad of celebrities. But I think those people, Lennon, and really were a small coterie of people that made massive change. So, of course, Duffy photographed all of those people as social documentation. And, of course, then we move on to that change in the 70s. It's interesting because the archive, looking at pictures from the late 50s and the 60s, the fashion styles. I mean, lots of portraits have got people are smoking. Everyone's smoking. You know, that's
right.
A massive change now. And then into the 70s, the fashion was a complete paradigm shift. And technology, of course, films got better. So there was sharper, more vibrant colors, which gave a different look. So the two separate periods that we have in the archive, the 60s and the 70s, are quite different in approach. And in between that 60s and 70s period, late 60s, so 69, 68, 69 to 70, Duffy actually gave up photography and went into film. He produced a film called Oh, What a Lovely War. And that took up 3 years of his time. He was frustrated. He wanted to direct that film, and he was very frustrated with the union structure. And so he went back to photography in 1970. So there was kind of two quite different areas of his work.
So when did he meet David Bowie? Because I know he took some pictures in 72 of Ziggy Stardust, and then on the film set of The Man Who Fell to Earth in 1976. But when did he first meet David?
Well, interestingly enough, when Duffy was producing Over the Lovely War, which is about the First World War set as a musical on Brighton Pier, there was a scene in a music hall where there was dancers, chorus girls, and David's girlfriend at the time, Harmony, was one of the chorus girls, and she tried to get David a job somehow as an actor or bit part player, and Oh, What a Lovely War. He never got a part in there, so that would have been probably. I don't know if they'd actually connected at that point, but that was the first sort of connection with David and Duffy. But it wasn't until 1972, and Tony DeFries had taken David Bowie on as a client, and Tony recognized David's talent and worked out a plan of how to make him a superstar. So up until that point, David had almost exclusively worked with Mick Rock as his photographer, and Tony felt that he needed to change that dynamic. So he put David together with 3 photographers, Sakita, David Bailey, and Duffy, to see how they would gel, essentially. I mean, he recognized they were all great photographers, but he wanted David to gel with someone new. And of course, or inevitably, Duffy and David gelled. So that first session with the Ziggy Stardust, the Freddie Beretti outfit and the Vox guitar were never used for anything, record cover or promotion. They were purely test shots. But that was the first time that David and Duffy had connected. And of course, Tony knew then that he would bring on the next album, and it was inevitable then that he would come to Duffy for that.
And then Duffy did 2 other albums as well, didn't he? He did Lodger and Monsters, and I love Monsters, because that was kind of a bit of a departure for David musically and also visually. And yeah, again, in the exhibition, which is currently at the South Bank to the May the 28th, I love how everything's archived, like you say, from the Swinging Sisters, 60s, from what's going on at the time, and then all the work that your father did, and especially those album covers. Obviously, it's Aladdin saying is a feature because it's the 50-year anniversary. But I love the process. You see all the process and also the shots as well of Lodger and on Monsters as well.
Yeah, I mean, Monsters was an interesting session. Duffy had actually given up photography in '79, and it's well documented that he tried to destroy his archive. The BBC made a 1-hour documentary on his life and work called The Man Who Shot the 60s, which is on our website on the video page, duffyarchive.com. So it's an interesting documentary, full of insight into the period and the way that the man was, the way that he thought, because you can look at photographs, but it doesn't really tell you much about the psyche of the creator. But so Duffy had tried to destroy his life's work. I suppose now there's huge value in archives and images as we look back. But Duffy just saw it as well. You know, I've been there, done that. Just it's in the way, get it. But luckily, he was stopped from burning all his material. I won't tell you how because you can watch the video online.
Okay, I will do. I will do.
But so at that point though, when David came to him in 1980, he'd more or less given up photography, and Duffy called me up. I'd started out on my own and photographed my contemporaries, as I see on the wall you've got there, Adam, who I went to school with. So yeah,
that's right.
I'd photographed Adam. Steve Strange became a great mate, and Steve, Carol Hayes and Rusty Egan started an agency called the Creative Workforce, of which myself, Peter Rashworth, and David Levine were the three photographers. Right. Levine did primarily Boy George. I did primarily Steve, and Peter Rashworth did everyone. Yeah, but it was a very creative little agency, and I shot quite a lot of music material, Sade, Spandau, Fine Young Cannibals, Ultravox, all that kind of 80s period. But of course, so I was kind of on a trajectory there, and Duffy came to me and said, David wants to do another shoot. I don't have a studio. Can we use your studio? I had a great studio down in Little Russell Street behind the British Museum there. And I said, yeah, sure. So we shot Scary Monsters in my studio. And after Duffy had shot quite a few pictures, David wanted some press pictures. And Duffy said, well, look, Chris is a photographer. Let's get a different feel to it. Let Chris take some pictures. So that was a fabulous opportunity there to shoot David. So, yeah. But yes, 5 sessions Duffy shot. And that was put together in a book that I did with Kevin Can called Duffy Bowie 5 Sessions, and which we've actually just sold out of now. I think it's out of print, but that documents the whole period. But I am working on a second edition because since that book was released, I interviewed so many more people, from Susie Ronson, Jeff McCormack, George Underwood. There's a whole kind of plethora of people that can add value to that story. So, and that also ties into with where we are with taking that whole series of images and stories into a museum exhibit. Over the years, we've done lots of what I call gallery. We've done lots of gallery sorry.
Yeah. So you first started in Chris Beatle's gallery in 2009, is that correct?
Yes, that was the first exhibition that we did. But the Bowie-specific exhibitions really came from 2013 with David Bowie Is, and we sort of mirrored every venue we found a gallery. But of course, that's their gallery shows. They're not a museum show. And I decided that we had enough material there to do our own museum show. But of course, a museum show is a very different animal from a gallery show. It's got to be educational. It's got to be multi-level. You've got to have video, audio, memorabilia. So I started collecting all these things to take those 5 sessions to a museum level, which is actually, we've achieved that, and it's actually on in Madrid at the moment. I think it's on till the end of July, and we're working on making this a world touring exhibition. You can, if you look on YouTube and you put in Bowie taken by Duffy at COAM, COAM, it's the Institute of Architects in Madrid. There is kind of a walk around. There's a video there, but so that's all very exciting to get that off the ground. And in a way, I mean, the South Bank Aladdin Sane is 1/5 of the bigger exhibition. It's a chip off that block. So if you like the
Madrid, just to see it.
yeah. I mean, if you like the South Bank show, then the bigger Taken show is for you.
So, what was it? When was your dad recognized as one of the 100 most influential photographers of all time?
I think that was probably 8 or 9 years ago. I mean, there are I mean, you can put that into Google and you find various calculations on that. I think uh, I saw at one point he was up in like the top 20, and then another point he was number 66. I guess it's subjective, really.
Yeah,
Everyone, it's like, what's your favorite record? But nevertheless, to be in the top 100 most influential photographers of all time is quite an achievement when you think how many photographers there are, and there have been. That's quite significant for
absolutely.
sure.
I
But I
wanted
think Duffy always said to me, if you want to know who the best jazz trumpeter is, ask a jazz trumpeter. And I think, we see on our Instagram and any of our feeds, Duffy's work is followed by a lot of photographers, and which tells me he's a photographer's photographer. And so many photographers I've come across have said to me, your father was such a major influence on me. So he was always there pushing boundaries and new ways of looking. And I think he has been an inspiration for a lot of photographers. At the point he gave up, I think he realized he saw the writing on the wall where photography was going and thought, well, I've done that. End of, move on to something else. So, and again, that connection with David in terms of the idea of what he called, you've got to burn your bridges to be able to move on, as David did when he continually killed off characters. Yeah. So they have got very similar sort of outlooks and approaches to their work.
So we're going to wrap up in a minute. So where can people find Duffy Archives website, social media, future plans? Like you said, you got an exhibition at the moment in the COAM in Madrid. Future plans in London or anything else?
Well, that's taken over. I mean, this year has been just like a tsunami because we had the Aladdin Sane 50 book, which has taken quite a while to put together. And we've got a special edition of that's available off either our website. It's only available from the Duffy Archive or AladdinSane50.com. You can go to either, or DuffyArchive.com. So that's taken up a huge amount of time. And the international exhibition in Madrid has been overwhelming in terms of, because it was our first exhibition with this, with Taken, has taken a huge amount of input. And then, of course, South Bank as well. So it's been overwhelming. It's started to slow down a little, so I'm starting to get my life back, which is nice. But there's always so many different avenues to go down, and technology keeps opening up. Virtual galleries is something we're looking at. I mean, I guess there's other areas that people have pushed, like NFTs, and there's different apps, and so we live in an incredible age where technology allows us to put out, and for other people to receive information. Our Instagram, Duffy, I think it's _archive, is another great medium for people to connect. And it's wonderful. I mean, one of the things that, and I am so privileged to be running the archive, is that we've got such great work, and that also people resonate with it. And really, I mean, for example, with the South Bank exhibit, I don't know if you noticed, but as you go out, there's a guest book. We've filled 3 of those up, and it's just extraordinary, the comments that we've got back, and the love and the connection, and I mean, from the Bowie material is quite phenomenal. So that gives me a lot of pleasure to feel that all the effort and energy I've put in comes back, that people do appreciate it and love it. So I'm very fortunate to be in this position, for sure.
Wonderful. And it's cross-generational, so you get people of all ages, parents, children. I saw so many people of different ages. Obviously an icon like David Bowie would attract that, but then again, your father's work as well, as with all the stuff that he's done as well. I can't wait.
Of course. I mean, exhibitions we've done, gallery shows, we've had, from a generational point of view, parents bringing little kids like 4 and 5 who know all the words to Starman, or and they get dressed up. But I think that period of David's work, and again, where we're so lucky from 72 to 80, where David really kind of worked the characters from Thin White Duke, and Ziggy, the Scary Monsters. They're very theatrical, and I think that appeals to kids as well, the visual aspect of that. So, and of course, amazing songs, but and then all the way people up into their 70s and beyond. It's incredible. Yeah, the demographics amazing. Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. Please send my regards to the lovely Sandy Goodman.
I will indeed. It's great
to see you again in person.
Yeah, great to catch up, and I'm very pleased you saw the show at South Bank.
Going again with some friends. I got a good friend of mine. It was Mark White. He was in ABC, and Bowie was like Bowie. And the thing he said to me, the big three: Roxy Music, Mark Bolan, and Bowie of that time period. And he was, and so I'm going to go with him. And a few more friends, and also it's only £5, and it's
yeah,
much worth.
You can't get a cup of coffee for that. But if you're going with Mark, Duffy shot an ABC video.
Oh, did he?
I think he shot All of My Heart.
Okay, I'll ask him about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, ask him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to edit some photos and videos that I took of the exhibition with this interview and let you know when it's ready to go out. But thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Inspirational. Thank you, Chris. All the best.
Great. Lovely to speak to you, and we'll catch up again soon.
Sure. Bye-bye.
All right.